students really participate, from high school to elementary, participate in what I think is a global issue, and that is the real conserving of our energy usage. And so from the eco teams at the high school to the green team here at the Hood School, I know that our students and staff have embraced that call to really think about how energy is used, not just in our schools, but in our homes and in our community. And Mr. Nelson is reporting out, our business manager reports out on a monthly basis on all aspects of energy consumption, from electricity to natural gas to vehicle fuel. And as Mr. Nelson says, there's a friendly little competition going on among the 5 schools, because every month we report out who has saved the most. And I'm very pleased that the Hood School, I think, has been a winner of that, and that I think is attributed directly to the efforts of our students and the staff. But you can see that in the month of November and December, we reduced consumption in electricity across all of our schools by 10.3% in terms of kilowatt hours, and then in December by 12.5. And you know, it's some seemingly simple things to really be aware of what you're doing in terms of whether it's fans or light or you know, just how electricity is being used. And that kind of awareness brought about the kind of reductions, and we hope to continue with that. The same thing with natural gas. In most of our schools, we're able to monitor right down to each classroom at the bachelor's school, to zones throughout the building at the other schools in terms of natural gas use. And so we can time and calculate when heat should be delivered and when it should be turned off. And we have been very clear that you need to keep classroom doors shut, because we're not heating the corridors, simply the same way that if you had your home, you wouldn't keep the front door open on a cold day, because you're going to lose the heat. So that in itself, those simple kinds of practices, not keeping main doors open, and being very thoughtful about this, has caused the natural gas consumption to go down. Now, there certainly have been complaints from students and staff and parents and school committee members from time to time when it's cold in the library at the middle school. But we're keeping temperatures at a comfortable level. But that comfortable level is really asking students to come dressed appropriately. And I don't know what it is about high school students particularly, but I see a lot of high school kids when the temperature is 20 in t-shirts and shorts, and no jacket and no exterior, you know, apparel. So their parents need to really pay attention to what they're wearing in school, because it's cooler. I did see today at the high school a lot of kids had their jackets on, so that's a good thing. So Mr. Nelson will continue to report out on the energy consumption in our schools, and we're going to continue to advocate for green teams in all schools.
And it is amazing the amount we've cut back on natural gas usage, and part of this was attributed to the temperature in November, which was warmer than average, but we used almost 51% less natural gas in November and 33% in December. That's great for the environment, and it's great financially. Again, though, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's good to have all of our students and staff thinking that way anyway. And as David said, Mr. Nelson does a great job putting together our purchasing and also keeping track of everything we spend, be it on energy, paper, whatever we're spending on. Mr. Nelson has it at his fingertips. So, any questions from the staff or committee? Thanks. Okay, next we have the 2009-2010 school calendar. Dr. Trojan?
I think that I'd like to have the committee approve the 2009-2010 2010, next year's school calendar in January now, rather than next in the spring. We need to be moving forward with this. At the last meeting, I presented multiple options around the school calendar, looking at not just the traditional after Labor Day start, but looking at some options where we would begin school before Labor Day, and then also looked at some models that would shut the school down in the winter months for longer periods of time, energy savings, and to be honest with you, after the discussion at the last committee meeting, I came away with a feeling that a major overhaul of the school calendar that did such things as combine February and April vacation or extend the December vacation a longer period of time, did not yield tremendous savings in terms of energy. Because even though school is not in session, our buildings are still used for various functions when students are not there, and so therefore the savings may not materialize. So what I'm presenting tonight are two options, and admittedly, one of the options, which is a before Labor Day start, is driven in part by the fact that this coming year, Labor Day is about as late as it gets. And when you tack on 5 school days, which you're required to do for snow, even though this superintendent rarely cancels school for snow, you still need to plan for that. That under the traditional start after Labor Day, the last day of school would be pushed almost to the end of June. So model 1 is the traditional start of school, where students would begin on the Wednesday after Labor Day and staff would come on the Tuesday after Labor Day. And then the second model is to look at a start where staff would come on the Monday before Labor Day and students would come Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of the week before Labor Day. Friday would be part of the Labor Day weekend, and then returning the following Tuesday, we would just move right on. In talking with the principals and the other administrators about that second calendar, I asked Mr. Bernard to survey the towns in the Cape Ann League who were starting before Labor Day. He reports that Hamilton, Wenham, Amesbury, Rockport, Masconomet Regional, North Andover, and Wilmington all responded to his survey, and they're all beginning school before Labor Day. I'm sure that there are many other communities that have moved to that before Labor Day start. The other reasoning behind before Labor Day start is to have almost one more additional week of instruction at the start of the school year rather than at the end of the school year, in order to get a little more time prior to the MCAS tests, which occur in the spring. So I have a traditional calendar, same vacations. I will say the only other change, and it's probably not only other, it's a major one, is to recommend a reduction in the number of student days. Presently, our students attend school 182 days. The student year is 182 days. It has been that way since probably in 1997, I believe it moved to 181. And then the following year to 182. So for about the last 7 or 8 years, our students have been in session 182 days. The state requirement, the state minimum, 180 days of school for students. You cannot go below that. You're hearing a lot of discussion now about those communities that were dealing with the ice storm and they lost week and a half or 2 weeks of school. They're not allowed to get a waiver. 180 days. And so when you add 5 additional days for snow, you must schedule 185. And the staff or teaching staff would come one more day beyond that. They come to work the day before school begins. So,
David, I have a question. On both these calendars, it says on the first day of school, grades 1 through 12 would report, and that's different from the way we have done it in the past.
yes.
Why would we change that? I
Well,
don't-
that would be because if we go to 180 days, as opposed to the 182, if we go to 180 days scheduled, then we would not be able to have that orientation session for 6th grade and 9th grade, because they would then be in session fewer than 180 days. Under the model that we've been operating on, we're in session for 182 days,
Okay, so they get,
except for 7th and 8th graders and 10th through 12th graders. They come to school on Thursday
Right.
because of the orientation.
so they get 181.
They only get 181. But if you back it off to 180, you have to be in session all students have to be in session for 180 days.
I guess personally, I don't buy the argument that they get an extra week of schooling at the beginning of the year before MCAS if we start before Labor Day, because I view those first 3 days, honestly, as almost wasted days, because the kids come to school for 3 days, and then they have 4 days off, including the weekend. And then it's almost like they're starting school over again. I've never bought into the before Labor Day schedule, because I don't see the value. And I see those first 3 days being lost because the kids then have 4 days off. It just has never made sense to me.
And I know the superintendent realizes it, but I just want to point out that Labor Day does change every year. It's always on a Monday, but the date changes. And while this year it happens to be on the 7th, someday it's going to be on the 1st.
Right.
Which means you'll be going back to school July 5th. Or August 24th or
Right.
25th, same thing. But you're going to be going back to school, a week, 3 weeks into August. And I just haven't heard any argument why we should change from what we're doing now to something different. If I heard some rational argument for it, I'd consider it, but otherwise, I don't get it. And
I've never read a study or anything that says that puts down on paper what the benefits are for going back before Labor Day. So I see no reason to make the change.
I move that we approve the school calendar for the traditional 185-day program that's put in front of us.
I second that, but I want to,
Motion and second, let's have some discussion.
I want to ask about the reduction to 180 days from the 182. I'm not so ready to do that. How much are we really saving dollars to cut out 2 days? And if the teachers are going to continue to go 183 days, what are you going to do with them with those 3 days? And is it in addition to the 6 professional development days that are built in?
Clearly, first of all, the teacher contract specifies the number of work days, and the current teacher contract, which expires in June, states 183
Three.
days.
Three.
That's in the
Three.
contract. So, number one, it would be up to the committee if you chose to, in the renegotiating of the contract, would be to decrease those days from 183 to 181. If you did not renegotiate it and you kept it 183, and students were in session for 180 days, then the question is, what would you do with staff for those 3 days? One of those days would be the day before school opens, the so-called orientation day. The other 2 days, it would be my recommendation for full day professional development, and then the early release days here